Welcome to Counter Narrative News, bringing you daily news today on Wednesday, the 18th of January, 2023. China, for the first time in 61 years, has seen its population shrink in this last 12 months by nearly 1 million people. This points to certain social economic anxieties which are impacting the Chinese people on the fronts of education, on the front of employment, and on housing, around the housing crisis and house prices in China. Some allege that China is some kind of mixed market socialist economy, that it's a model that people should seek in terms of the protection and the advance of working people in China. But however, this demographic crisis in China points to something else more problematic. Back in 2016, the Chinese government removed its one-child policy in relation to the dominant and the vast majority group in China, that's the Han people. Now the government is encouraging the same group of people to have at least 3 children, but this is not happening, pointing to, as was said aforementioned, the anxieties around employment, education, and housing. A socialist economy would actually seek to breed confidence, pardon the pun, amongst the population for them to feel more confident in having children and building families. Going to Peru, one of the biggest commodity trading companies in the world, Glencore, which is a Western capitalist-owned company having its offices in the Netherlands and London and Switzerland, is seeing its massive copper mine in Anti-KKK in Peru having to quote-unquote restrict its production because of the people's resistance in and around the copper mine in relation to protesting against the former leftist President Castillo being removed to power and waiting detention for trial and being replaced by right-wing Boluarte. Peru is the second biggest copper producer in the world, and one has to ask the rhetorical question, where are the profits and the wealth from mining copper going? It's not going into the pockets of the Peruvian people who are mining it and who are laboring in general. It's going into the pockets of these Western capitals of Glencore company. Indeed, the Peruvian people, half of which are seeing malnutrition, and there was a report as well in Ecuador that children are, more than 50% of them are suffering malnutrition as well, which is a widespread problem across the region and in other regions of the global south. Western newspapers are starting to write opinion pieces that basically the situation in Peru is untenable and unsustainable. Indeed, if the profits of multinational imperialist companies like Glencore are being negatively impacted, this will cause great consternation amongst capitalist colonial powers who would want to seek some kind of change conducive to the continuation of their super profits. Now, of course, for them to compromise with the radical resistant masses of Peru would also perhaps mean that they will have to be forced by the strength of the popular movement to redistribute their profit making amongst the masses. And that's where Western capitalism is in a bind here, because they would want to be seeking to extract further super profits from the laboring masses and the natural wealth of Peru, not for it to contract on the basis of a popular uprising as we're seeing there. Going to Tunisia recently, it's the 10-year anniversary of the Tunisian uprising under the umbrella of the so-called Arab Spring, which some people argue is the Arab Sting, which overthrew the former president of Ben Ali there. The Tunisian uprising did not achieve any concrete gains for the Tunisian people. Actually, it created more social, economic crises and political crises for the Tunisian people, including the great reduction of investments around the tourist economy. Also, the Tunisian uprising was an indirect cover to the NATO operation on Libya, which destroyed the most affluent country when it comes to social distribution of wealth amongst the people. There was no resistance to the war in either Tunisia and in the other and the other Arab countries impacted by the Arab Spring. The Tunisian people going forward are stuck between a rock and a hard place, in the sense between authoritarian states and leaders on the one hand, and supremacist forces using and abusing religion to manipulate the people on the other hand. Recently, yesterday, January the 17th, sees the anniversary of the martyrdom of Congolese independence leader Patrice Lumumba. He was martyred on January the 17th, 1961, in an operation which we know now was conducted both by Britain and the US state agencies in the form of the CIA and the MI6. Lumumba represented a radical figure for not only Congolese independence and a socialist-oriented project, but also a Pan-African one, which many leading pioneering Pan-Africanists at the time, including Kwame Nkrumah and also Malcolm X, was inspired by and in support of Lumumba. Finally, on this day, back in the early 50s, at the Battle of Hayes Pond in North Carolina, Native American resistance by means of shotguns and other weapons routed a rally by the violent white supremacist group of the Ku Klux Klan, or the KKK. It has to be said that one former Grand Wizard of the KKK, David Duke, is a very close associate and comrade of the Iranian regime, the Syrian regime, and very much a part of what is called the quote-unquote red-brown, i.e. fascist collaboration racket or advocacy circle that sees certain individuals trying to drag what's usually seen as left-wing platforms and agendas and manipulate it and distort it and put it under the leadership of the far right. Please continue to subscribe, like, share and comment, and we wish you the very best.